Hello friends. In last lecture we discussed about the absorption of water, how water absorbed by the plant by the roots. Once the water is absorbed by the plant by the roots and it entered into the xylem, then that water is not remain as merely as water. Okay, it becomes a sap because that water contains different minerals, different elements, different solutes, salts, and because of that the water becomes as a sap. Now uh, today we will discuss about how this sap or this water, absorbed water by the root, it will ascend or it will transport from the roots to the what we call it, that different aerial parts of the plants. Getting it? Now for that, the I have prepared one presentation for you. We will discuss with the help of this presentation. Let me share my screen. Uh, Remember that the water, which contains different organic solutes and different minerals, uh, it is a dilute solution. Getting it? It is a dilute solution of all these components, and this solution it moves in upward direction, and this movement is against the gravitational force, and because of that the ascending of water takes place from a roots to the leaves or to different aerial parts of the plant. Getting it? Now let us see one by one what is a sap. As we have discussed earlier, that the sap is a dilute solution of water and the mineral ions or salts, and this water it is absorbed by the roots from the soil. So the different mineral ions and salts, when dissolved in the water, it becomes a sap, and the upward movement of sap from the roots to the different aerial part, it is called as ascent of sap. Getting it? Now the question is that how the water is transported up to that height. There are plants of 3000 years old, and they are attaining the height of up to the 300 to 500 feet. If you want to shift the water, or if you want to shift the water from the ground floor to the third, fourth, or fifth floor, then what much energy we require? We require the pump of 1 hp, water pump of 1 hp, 2 hp, or 3 hp, and with the help of that pump we can uplift the water from ground floor to the third, fourth, fifth, sixth floor. It requires much more electrical energy. But how this process it is going on into the plant? How plants uplift the water from soil to the height of 500 or 400 feet? And this process is called as the ascent of sap, isn't it? So the exact definition of the ascent of sap is: the ascent of sap is the process in which the upward movement of the sap or water along with different minerals or elements takes place against the gravitational force, isn't it? Against the gravitational force from root to the different aerial parts of the plant. That process is called as ascent of sap. Getting it? Now, the rate of the ascent of sap or rate of the uplifting of this water to the different aerial part is different, isn't it, in different plants? Now, who decides this rate of the ascent of sap? Isn't it? The elements which are involved in the path, or the elements which forms the path of the ascent of sap, these elements having small pores, isn't it? And the diameter of that pore, are you getting it? The path, it is formed by some kinds of the elements of the plants, isn't it? The path for the ascent of sap, it is formed by some kind of the elements of plants, isn't it? And these elements having small pores, and the diameter of these pores decides the rate of the ascent of sap. Getting it? The moment of, or the rate of the moment of sap varies with different diameters, and if the diameter of that particular element is 100 to 200 micron meter, then the rate of, or the moment of the sap is 16 to 45 meter per hour. And if that diameter is few or less, that is up to 25 to 75 micron meter, then the rate of the ascent of sap or moment of the or ascending of the water is 1 to 6 meter per hour. So it all depends upon the diameter. So this is the same, the upward movement of the water from the roots to aerial parts of the plant body is called as the ascent of sap, often called as the translocation of the water as well. And it is fascinating to understand that how the water moves in the plants to such a great height. As we discussed earlier, that it is like miracle how without any expenditure of energy the plants are able to perform this activity, and the water is pulled from ground to up to the height of 500 feet, isn't it? And this becomes possible because of certain forces and certain pulling forces. Okay, now let us discuss with the path. So what is the path for the ascent of sap? I take it. We know that just like as in case of the human body, in human body there is a particular system, what we call it as a circulatory system, by which the each and every nutrient or component which we eat, it is absorbed in the blood, and it is then transported to each and every cell of the body. So there is a particular system, circulatory system in the body. In the same way, there is a particular system, what we call it as the vascular system in the plants, isn't it? And one of the important component of that vascular system is a xylem, isn't it? So this xylem, it is a continuous connection from the root. It is having the continuous connection from the root to the different parts of the plant. It forms a continuous column from roots to the leaves. Getting it? And this xylem, we all know the structure of the xylem. That xylem, it is made up of four components: xylem parenchyma, vessels, tracheids, and fibers. Of which these three vessels, tracheids, and fibers are a dead tissue or dead cells, and the xylem, it is a living, isn't it? So among these four, the main component which works for the what we call that the ascent of sap, which are involved in actually involved in the or which plays a major role in the ascent of sap, these components are these one, okay, vessels and the tracheids. So what are these vessels? Vessels are drum shaped cells. These are elongated drum shaped cells which are placed one after another, end to end, and between these two cells there is a plate which is called as perforation plate, isn't it, which are having a large pores. So these vessels forms a continuous pipeline like structure, isn't it? In the same way, the tracheids are there. The tracheids have large septal perforations that provides the continuous system and do not afford much resistance for the smooth flow of water across it or through it. Okay, so you can see here the blue colored component. There is a phloem vessel, and in which the direction, in both of the direction, the movement of the component takes place. But here in the xylem vessel, you can see here in the xylem vessel, there is a continuous path, and only the movement of the component takes place in one direction, that is in upward direction. So these are the xylem vessels which act like a pipeline, isn't it? Which pore size is very large and having the perforation plate at their end walls, isn't it? Xylem tracheids, they are having the perforations to the lateral wall, and the xylem parenchyma, it is as I told you that the xylem parenchyma, it is a living cell and it provides the access for the lateral movement of the water, isn't it? That is, it will transport the water toward the cortical cells, to the cortex, isn't it? Uh, it contains many inorganic and organic components which are absorbed by the root system. Okay, once the water is entered in the xylem, then the xylem parenchyma, it is in contact to the xylem, and this xylem parenchyma, it transport the water to the cortical cells of the stem or cortical cells of the branches, isn't it? So lateral movement of the water, it is carried out by the what we call it as xylem parenchyma. So the trachea, tracheids, with their large lumen, and end-to-end association. They act they act as excellent pipelines for the movement of the water, and this forms the path for the ascent of Sam. This system, that silent system, it forms the path for the ascent of Sap. Okay, now different scientists form the different theories to understand this ascent of Sap. Okay, they propose the different theories. And what are these different theories of the ascent of Sap? There are different types of the theories, like vital theories. Some vital theories are also proposed by different scientists, among which the relay pump theory, which is proposed by scientist Goldwysky. And this relay pump theory, it is proposed in the year of 1884, and this theory states that the upward movement of the water in the xylem, this upward movement of the water is due to the pumping of the xylem parenchyma, isn't it? That upward movement of the water in the vessel, that particularly the xylem vessel, it takes place due to the what we call it the pumping of the xylem vessel. Okay, no, sorry, the xylem parenchyma, isn't it? The pumping activity of the xylem parenchyma is important for the transport of the water through the xylem here. But not only the pumping activity of the xylem parenchyma works here, but also the pumping activity of the medullary range. So medullary range and the xylem parenchyma, their pumping activity works together for the ascent of Sap, isn't it? But this theory was not accepted by different scientists, and this is opposed. The pulsation theory, which is proposed by scientist J.C. Bose, that is Jagdish Chandra Bose, the Indian botanist. According to him, the ascent of Sap, it is because of the this particular this theory, it is proposed by scientist J.C. Bose in the year of 1923. And according to this theory, the ascent of Sap, it is through the xylem. It takes place due to the pulsation activity of the cell, isn't it? Pulsation activity of the cells of the innermost cortical layer or innermost cortex, isn't it? It means that the cells of the innermost cortex having the pulsation action, and this pulsation action or pulsation activity, it supports for the ascent of Sap. But this theory, it is supported by Molish, but it is not supported by many other scientists, and other scientists did not supported this theory. So this theory is also not accepted for the ascent of Sap. Okay, now the next theory, it is a root pressure theory. Here, this root pressure theory, it is proposed by scientist Stephen Halls in the year of 1727 for the first time. Later on, this theory was supported by scientist Priestley in the year of 1922. And this root pressure theory, according to this theory, the water absorbing forces are developed inside the roots, getting it? And the root pressure is nothing but the hydrostatic pressure. Okay, the hydrostatic pressure developed in the root xylem, as a result of that, the metabolic activities of the xylem, isn't it? These metabolic activities of the xylem increases, and particularly the water from the xylem, it is transported. How it is transported? We know that in the xylem there is a much more concentration of the solution, and which is more than that of the concentration of the cell sap, than that of the concentration of the soil solution. So as a result of that, water from the soil solution, it will be absorbed by the root cell and it will enter into the xylem. So as a result of that, due to the more amount of the water, a pressure is created, isn't it? And that pressure, which called as root pressure, and that pressure is not more than that of the 2 atmosphere. Okay, so the inside the xylem of root, the solution is there, which osmotic gradient or osmotic pressure is more than that of the soil solution. Because of that, water from the soil solution is absorbed in the root. From root, it will be transported to the xylem of the root, and from xylem the water is then lifted in upward direction because of this pressure. Okay, because of this pressure, the water, when absorbed in the root and it will transport it to the xylem. A pressure is created. That pressure is called as root pressure, and the magnitude of that root pressure is not more than that of the 2 atmosphere. And this much pressure is not enough to transport the water from root up to the height of 500 feet. So this theory is also not accepted by different scientists. Okay, and next theories. These theories are called as physical theories. And among these physical theories, one theory is atmospheric pressure theory. Another one is a capillary theory, and the imbibitional theory, and the fourth one is a what we call that transpiration pull theory. Okay, of which we will discuss three theories: the capillary theory. The capillary theory, we know that the capillary action, we all know about the capillary tube. When we dip the capillary tube into the beaker which contains the water, then what we found? We found that the level of the water inside the beaker is lower than that of the level of the water inside the capillary tube. What? This is why so? This is because of the capillary action. A capillary force is there, and because of this capillary force, the water is rise up in the capillary tube, isn't it? And according to this theory it is proposed by scientist Boehm in the year of 1809. According to the scientist Boehm, the xylem vessels and the tracheids are having, or these are also having the pores just like as that of the pores present in the capillary tube. Okay, so these pores, when they come in contact with the water, they also develop the capillary pores, and because of this capillary force, the water rises up into the xylem, and water or ascending of the water will take place. Okay, up to some extent this is true, and this theory will work for the herbaceous plants, but this theory will not work for the plants which are trees, okay, which are 3000 years old, which are 400 to 500 feet at height. So in this situation this theory proved to be wrong. So this theory also is not accepted by different scientists. Okay, the third theory is imbibitional theory. We all know the process of the imbibition. What is imbibition? Imbibition is the process here the certain molecules absorb the water and they get swell up, isn't it? So when they come into contact with the water is absorbed by these molecules. And we all know that the cell wall is made up of the cellulose. The theory behind this theory is that the cellulose present in the cell wall, it will absorb the water, and that water will absorb by the cell wall. This cell wall is in contact with its adjacent cell. That adjacent cell, it will again contact with its another adjacent cell, and accordingly the water from one cell to the another cell will be transported, isn't it? This theory, it is proposed by the scientist Unger in the year of 1868, and it is supported by scientist Sap in the year of 1878. Okay, so but the magnitude of the force which is developed due to the absorption of the water by the cellulose, that magnitude of the force, what we call it at the imbibitional force, that magnitude is very very less, isn't it? And it is not able to uplift the water to these trees, isn't it? So that's why this theory is also not accepted. Now the next theory is very important theory, which is having or which is supported by different scientists, and that theory is called as transpiration pull theory, and it is also called as cohesion theory. Here the water absorbing forces are not developed primarily in the roots, isn't it? The water absorbing forces are developed in the leaves according to this theory, and these forces are developed because of the process of transpiration. Getting it? The theory was proposed. This theory, it was proposed by scientists Dodson and Joly, isn't it? And the this theory, and is based on the two phenomenon, the cohesion and the adhesion. We know all that the cohesion phenomenon. What is cohesion phenomenon? The cohesion phenomenon is that phenomenon where two molecules are attracted towards the each other by a particular force, what we call it as a cohesive force. But these two molecules are of similar type. So similar types of the molecules are attracted to each other with the help of the cohesive force. That phenomenon is called as cohesion phenomenon. And what is adhesion phenomenon then? The adhesion is also the attraction between the two molecules. It is also the attraction between the two molecules. But here, the two molecules are of not same type. These are different types of the molecules. So the attraction between the two different types of the molecule and the force which is exerted there for the attraction, that force is called as adhesive force, isn't it? And these two forces are working here in the transpiration pull theory. These two forces play an important role in the transpiration pull theory. Okay, so the transpiration pull force developed in the leaves by the, as I discussed earlier, that the transpiration pull which is developed here, this transpiration pull is not developed in the roots. The transpiration pull is developed here in the leaves, isn't it? By the process of the transpiration. Okay, and a water column, continuous water column is maintained from roots to the leaves because of the cohesion and the adhesion phenomenon, cohesive force and the adhesive force, isn't it? So the cohesion is the phenomenon of attraction between the similar molecule. The water molecule remain attracted by cohesive force. There is attraction between the water molecule and the inner wall of the xylem. Okay, cohesion. It's all right that the cohesion is the attraction between the water molecule. But what is adhesion or adhesive force? The adhesive force is the force which is developed between the water molecule and the cell wall of the xylem. So the water molecule, the force between the water molecule and cell wall of the xylem, it also helps for maintaining the water column. So due to this, the water forms the continuous column in the xylem vessel and xylem. Are you getting it? Each water molecule, it is in contact with the other water molecule and it is attracted by the other water molecule by cohesive force. And this water molecule, it is also in contact with the xylem cell wall or cell wall of the xylem vessel. And this attraction is called as adhesive force. So these two forces form the continuous water column from roots to the leaves. As I have told you that the xylem forms the continuous system from the root to the leaves or from root to the each and every part of the plant, particularly in hair plants. Okay, xylem forms the continuous system from roots to the each and every part of the plant. So wherever the xylem is present, water column is maintained in that xylem, and this water column is maintained because of the cohesive force and the adhesive force. Okay, you can see this is the diagram, and how the ascent of sap takes place. You can see this: the root absorb the water, okay, from the soil. Then water it is transported into the stem. Then from stem it entered into the petiole. Then from petiole you can see the here now the internal structure of the leaf. From petiole the water it will enter in the leaf. You can see the leaf having the upper epidermis, then palisade cells, then what we call it as a vascular bundle of different fends. Then these are the mesophyll cells. These are the intercellular spaces. This is the lower epidermis, and these are the stomata, isn't it? So this is the internal structure of the leaves. Okay, when water from the petiole it will enter into the what we call the vascular bundles of the leaves or different fends of the leaves, then the water from these vascular bundles, now the simple theory you remember. Okay, this process, transpiration process, we will discuss in detail this transpiration process in next lecture, but till now you just remember that the transpiration process is continuously going on in the plant. It is a necessary evil, what we call it as a necessary evil, and water loss is continuous going on there, isn't it? In the form of the water vapors through the pores of the leaves, what we call it as a stomata or stomatal pore. What happens during the transpiration? The stomata opens, and when the stomata opens, the water from the intercellular spaces it will come out of the leaves of the plant through the stomata or stomatal pore, and it will enter into the atmosphere. When it will enter? When the concentration of the water in the atmosphere is less than that of the concentration of the water in the intercellular spaces. At that time, when the stomatal cell get the water from the mesophyll cell, the stomatal cell becomes turgid, it will swell up, and it results into the opening of the stomata. And when the stomata opens, the water from the intercellular spaces will come out of the leaves. So at intercellular spaces, there is much less amount of the water as compared to the mesophyll cells. So water from the mesophyll cell will enter into the intercellular spaces. So mesophyll cells don't have much more water. The DPD and OP in the mesophyll cell will be less. So it will take water from its adjacent mesophyll cell. That adjacent mesophyll cell, it will take water in the same way from its adjacent mesophyll cell, which is in contact with the vascular tissue, or what we call that xylem. And the xylem which is in contact with the vascular tissue, that is, sorry, the mesophyll cell which is in contact with the xylem, that mesophyll cell gets the water from the xylem. So to the xylem, there is less amount of water, isn't it? Then that xylem of leaf, it will take water from its adjacent vessel, xylem vessel. In the same way, that xylem vessel will take water from the xylem of petiole. In the same way, xylem of petiole will take water from the xylem of branches. In the same way, the xylem of branches will take water from the xylem of stem. The xylem of stem will take water to its adjacent xylem vessel in the stem. In the similar manner, the water, it will be taken out of the root, isn't it? And the root will absorb the water from the soil. But in this process, a water column is not disturbed, it is maintained. And who maintains this water column? The cohesive force, that is attraction between the water molecule. You can see the attraction between the water molecule at left side, which is shown in the circle. The attraction between the water molecule, getting it? And the attraction between the cell wall and of xylem and water molecule. These two types of the attractions do not disturb the water column. There is a continuous water column from roots to the leaves. This helps in the pulling. Okay, so the transpiration process by which the water loss takes place, it creates the pulling force, isn't it? Because of that pulling force, water from the xylem, it will be pulled into the what you call the leaves, and from the xylem vessel, it will pull it up from the roots, because the column is not disturbed there. Okay, you can see this is the structure of the leaf, and how the water it will come out of the leaves through the stomata, which is shown by the blue colored arrow. Okay, and how it will be entered into the xylem, it is also shown by the blue colored arrow. And this is the structure, internal, what we call it as the structure of the leaf. Okay, and this is the diagrammatical representation. Here the water from the roots, it will absorb by the from the soil, it is absorbed by the roots. From roots it goes to the stem. From stem, how the water molecules are attracted to each other, you can see here adhesion and cohesion phenomenon. In detail we will see. And how it goes to the leaves, and from leaves how it enter, or it is lost in the atmosphere. And as the water is lost in the atmosphere, the transpiration pool is created there, and pulling force is created there. Because of that, water is pulled out. And as the water column is maintained by these two forces, cohesive and adhesive forces, water from root, it will be pulled to the leaves. Okay, now you can see this is the water column. Okay, these are the water molecules in the soil, then entered in the root, then flow to the stem, then it goes to the leaves. But there is no discontinuation in this column, and this is because of the two forces. Okay, there are the hydrogen bonds which are present between the two water molecules. In general, the hydrogen bonds are called as weak bonds, but when they are acted on the water molecule, two water molecule, these bonds become strong. Okay, when we when the fine water column are subjected to the transpiration pull as great as 1000 bars or more, the water column is likely to snap, but does not, because intermolecular forces that hold the water molecules together are greater than the opposing forces. Okay, it means that the intermolecular forces which hold the water molecule, these forces are greater than that of the opposing forces. Okay, because of that, the water column is maintained there. This is the diagram flow chart of the transpiration pull theory, in which the whole things are there. The soil, the water from the soil entered into the root, then it transport to the ground tissue, that is a cortex, then it goes to the endodermis, pericycle, xylem of the root, then from xylem of the root to the xylem of the stem, then from xylem of the stem to the xylem of the petiole, and then from xylem of the petiole to the xylem of the what we call the leaves, and from the xylem of the leaves to the mesophyll cells, and from mesophyll cells to the intercellular spaces, and then from the stomata it will come out of the leaves, and this is called as the transpiration. And because of the lack of water, or some shortage of the water, a transpiration pool is created, and water from the xylem it will continuously enter into the leaves, and this is called as the transpiration pool. Okay, this transpiration pool or such forces are called as cohesive forces. Okay. Transpiration pool is developed, but the water column is maintained. Now you see here two types of the forces: cohesion force, cohesive force. This is the cohesive force. Okay, attraction between the two water molecules. You can see here. Okay, are you see? Um, are you looking this my cursor? Okay, attraction between the two water molecules, and this is the adhesive force here, water molecule and the cell wall, xylem cell wall. Okay, this is the attraction. This is called as the adhesion. So these two phenomena are working there. These two forces are working there for maintaining the water column, and because of this water column, transpiration pool is developed because of the transpiration, and because of the transpiration pool, water is pulled, and this water is pulled from root to the leaves, and this pulling or the pulling force, because of the transpiration process, it is maintained because of the water column, and this water column is maintained because of the cohesive force and the adhesive force, isn't it? So these three forces working together for the ascent of sap. Okay, because of the pulling force, the water is pulled, isn't it, into the leaves, and because of the maintenance of the water column, the water from root to the leaves, the movement of the water or ascending of the water from the leaves to the from the roots to the leaves will take place. Okay, so such forces are called cohesive force. They are nothing but the hydrogen bonds between the water molecules. The overall strength of the water column in such narrow xylem elements has been estimated to be many folds higher than the transpiration pull and the gravitational pull put together. You remember it? Transpiration pull and gravitational pull. When we put together, then also the overall strength of these forces, which forces, cohesive force and adhesive force, is more. Getting it? And because of that, the water column is maintained in the xylem vessel. Okay. Now, the explanation which I have explained earlier, that the leaves lose the water by the stomata by the process of the transpiration. The water transpired through the mesophyll cells spaces also. Okay, in the intercellular spaces also. The diffusion pressure defect increases and the water potential decreases in the mesophyll cells. Due to this, the water moves along the concentration gradient. Now, the water is continuously pulled by the cohesion and the adhesive forces. Okay, this upward force is called as transpiration pull. Okay, this is the flow chart how the strong forces of the attraction in water molecule it is developed, and the tensile strength of the water and plus adhesive force it is also developed in the xylem vessel. The water molecules remain adhered to the xylem vessel or xylem vessel walls. Okay, these are certain supportive evidences for the cohesive force theory. Okay, um, and the cohesive force that holds the water molecule in a column as narrow as the xylem vessel is very strong, and they withstand the opposing transpiration and the gravitational pulls. Okay, because this gravitational pull is opposing force, but this opposing force is less than that of the cohesive force and the adhesive force. Okay, because of the opposing forces, the tensile develops in the water column. As a result of that, the xylem elements become slightly narrow. This results into the contraction and the expansion of the stem, which has been demonstrated by using the dendrometer, isn't it? So the contraction, the contraction and the expansion of the vessel takes place. Because of this, the 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 forces, which forces that is called as the cohesive and the adhesive forces. Okay, the forces that operates the cohesion, that is transpiration pull, are just passive forces, isn't it? These forces are passive, which do not require energy. We have discussed earlier at the beginning of this lecture that this process do not require any form, any metabolic form of the energy, isn't it? No metabolic energy is involved in this process. And this energy, why this energy is not required? Because of the process of the transpiration. By the process of the transpiration pull is developed, and by these forces, two forces, which forces? Cohesive and adhesive forces. The water column is maintained in the xylem vessel, and this water column and the transpiration pull works together for the uplifting of the water in the xylem vessel, and ascending of the water will take place in this manner. Getting it? So this is very important phenomenon. Okay, and with this, the plants can be what we call that uplift the water up to the 500 uh, feet height. Okay, and this process do not require any expenditure of the energy. And this is all about the what we call it as uh, the transpiration pull theory. This theory is also called as the cohesion cohesive theory. Okay, so